Chapter 58. The businessman was Bill Braverman, and Ellen marveled at the odds that he would show up at the airport at the exact time as his neighbor. She got a closer look at him than she had before, and he was an attractive man with a tall, wiry build, dark hair, and a nose that looked like Will's, even in profile. She tried not to stare as he took out his wallet and cleared his throat, and at about the same time the redhead turned around and glanced behind her. She looked right at Bill, who stood behind her, but strangely she didn't say hello. Instead, she turned away and faced the ticket counters. Ellen didn't get it. The redhead had to have seen Bill. He was right behind her, and the tallest man in the line, not to mention her neighbor. "We're moving," the old man said, and Ellen shifted forward, glued to the goings-on. Something was fishy between Bill and the redhead, but she wasn't jumping to conclusions. She stayed tuned to Bill as he took out his wallet and faced the front of the line, showing no sign that he recognized his neighbor, who was standing in front of him. "Huh?" "I know." Ellen's hand went to the tip of her nose. It would be hard to explain at work tomorrow. Then again, everything would be hard to explain at work tomorrow. "One last thing." Connie picked up her bags, and her smile vanished. "I'm sorry about the phone business. Hope I didn't get you in too much trouble." "Don't worry, I can deal with it," Ellen said, though she didn't know how. "You took great care of him, and that's what matters." "Thanks." Connie turned to Will. "See you later, alligator." "In a while, crocodile," Will called over his shoulder, playing happily on the floor, his world order restored. "See you." Connie let herself out, and Ellen went over and touched Will's hair. The dark blonde filaments felt soft under her fingertips, and she tried not to notice his hair color was almost the same as Carol's. "Please say thank you to Connie." "Thank you, Connie." Will scrambled to a standing position, then ran over and hugged his babysitter, and Ellen could see how happy it made her. She didn't want to think about how Connie would react if Will turned out to be frowning. "No, but I know that a while ago, she used to see a guy named Rob Moore." Ellen felt her heartbeat quicken. What did she say about him? Just that he was a jerk. How long ago was this, that she saw him? I don't know, but it was old news. 3 or 4 years ago? Yeah, really in her past. Ellen gathered that if you were in your 20s, 3 years ago was history. Did she mention where he was from? Not that I remember. Did she tell you anything else about him, like where he lived or what he did for a living? No, nothing like that. Melanie blew out an acrid cone of smoke. How about his age, or what kind of car he drove, or where he was from, anything like that? No, just that he was a bad dude. Used to smack her around, and she dumped him. She wouldn't take that forever. That was the thing about Amy. She was the one we all thought would make it. Tears glistened in Melanie's bloodshot eyes. 2 of the counselors came. Rose picked up her heavy burger and took a bite in a way that looked almost angry to Ellen, but she wanted to stay on point. "I'm trying to learn about Amy's death. The family told me she overdosed accidentally, or that it was bad heroin, street heroin." "She didn't overdose." Rose shook her head, and laughter burst from a nearby table, a group of caffeinated undergraduates. "More likely, the junk was bad. Street junk gets cut with strychnine." Ellen shuddered. "Poison?" "Yes. Melanie told me that Amy still had her Subutex on her, which she didn't take, and we both read her last texts, which were upbeat. Amy didn't mention to Melanie that she was looking to start doing drugs again. Had she mentioned anything like that to you?" "No, not at all." Rose finished chewing, then reached for her coffee and took a sip. "I wonder why she didn't call you or Melanie if she felt tempted to do drugs again." "You wonder?" Rose winced between bites. "I'm not her sponsor, but I was her friend now with any frequency." Ellen felt an ominous tightening in her chest, trying to put 2 and 2 together on the spot. "Why does any of this matter? Do you think Rob Moore had something to do with Amy's using again?" "I don't know," Ellen answered, feeling an odd momentum building within her. She wished she could tell Rose that she intended to find out, but she was too stricken to speak. Too many things weren't making sense, or maybe they were. She sensed it wasn't speculation, that Amy's death was connected to her visit to Cheryl, that she had set it all in motion, and that Rob Moore had everything to do with Amy's death. "You there?" "Sorry." Ellen fake-checked her watch, then rose. "Geez, I'm late. I should probably get going. Thanks so much." "Now?" Rose blinked in confusion. "We're in the middle of a conversation." "I know, but I have to go." Ellen grabbed her coat and purse from the seat. "I'll follow up and let you know if I learn anything new. Thanks again." "You think we should call the police?" "No," Ellen said too quick for. Marcello was saying, "Whatever it is, we can figure it out. Everything is going to be all right. You'll see." He held her tight, rocking her slightly, and she heard him saying again that everything was going to be all right, and she listened to his words as if she were a small child, permitting herself to be told a fairy tale. "I made a mistake, a terrible mistake." Ellen looked up at him through her tears, and she could see in his expression that he had let his guard slip away, and all that was left was a naked pain that must have mirrored her own. He stroked her cheek gently, brushing away her tears, and Ellen felt his other arm behind her back and leaned against it fully, letting him support her. His eyes met hers, so full of feeling that she felt a kind of wonderment, and she couldn't remember anyone ever looking at her that way, and in the next instant he lowered his face and kissed her softly on the lips, once, and then again. "Everything's going to be all right," he murmured. Ellen woke up naked, her limbs intertwined with Marcello's and her head resting on a musky patch of his chest. She wondered what time it was, disentangling herself. Marcello had turned out the lamp at some point, leaving the room dim except for the glow of a streetlight bleeding through the slats in the window shutters. She propped herself up on an elbow and squinted at her watch. 9 o'clock. Her life rushed back at her like a freight train, full of noise, power, and something else. Fear. Suddenly she knew what had happened, all at once, as if she had seen it in a nightmare. Amy was murdered. So was Karen Batts. Rob Moore is killing everyone who knows that Will is really Timothy. Ellen sprang from the couch, looking for her clothes. She wiggled into her skirt, slid into her sweater, jumped into her boots. Marcello slept on, his snoring soft and regular, and she didn't wake him to explain. She didn't have a minute to lose. She grabbed her coat, found her purse, and fumbled for her car keys, her heart beginning to beat fast. She crossed to the front door. She looked up at Moore, begging him to stop. "Is that the look of love you're giving me?" Moore kept his boot on Will's head, but eased backwards slightly. The redness ebbed from Will's cheeks. He was choking under the duct tape. Ellen prayed to God he could breathe, that his skull wasn't injured, that his heart could withstand the pressure. Moore said, "I would have thought you got your fill with your boyfriend." Ellen struggled to think through her panic. Moore must have been following her. Had he been to the funeral? What was he going to do with the gasoline? She refused to go to the obvious answer. Her throat emitted primal noises. "Oh, shut up." Moore took his foot from Will's head, leaving him crying hysterically, his tears mixing with the mud on his face. Ellen silenced herself, making eye contact with Will, trying to tell him that everything would be all right. She had to figure out what to do. Her thoughts raced. Nobody was coming for help. The Kaufmans weren't home. Her neighbors on the other side were never home. Everyone else was hunkered in their beds for the snowstorm. Moore picked up the plastic jug and twisted off the lid, releasing the unmistakable odor. He tipped the container over on top of Will, and gasoline spewed from the spout, splashing onto Will's legs in the snowsuit, the solvent darkening the material from blue to black. Stark, cold horror paralyzed Ellen's thoughts. Moore was going to set them on fire. He was going to kill them both. She started screaming behind the duct tape. Bing bong! Suddenly the doorbell rang in the living room. Ellen screamed louder behind the tape, even though she knew it was useless. "Shut up!" Moore set down the gasoline jug and stepped hard on Will's head. Ellen shook her head back and forth like a madwoman. She prayed frantically that Moore would stop hurting Will. She didn't know who was at the door. It was too late at night for a visitor, unless it was Martha Kaufman. Maybe they'd come home in the meantime and needed to borrow something. Maybe one of her boys was sick. Bing bong! Moore grimaced, angry. A close-up of bloodshot eyes, greasy mustache, and breath foul with beer. Ellen scrambled to get her feet under her. her knees jelly. Her thoughts clicked ahead, running the possibilities. What if it's my neighbor? What if she won't go? Make her. Moore shoved her from the kitchen, and she half walked, half stumbled through the dining room, glancing quickly out the windows. The lights still were off at the Kaufmans. Connie would have let herself in. So who was ringing the bell? Marcello. He was the only possibility. He would help her. Together they'd get Will out of this. She hurried through the dining room, her heart thundered, and she crossed the living room toward the door. Bing bong! Ellen couldn't see the face at the door, but a shadow stood silhouetted in the yellowish porch light. She opened the door and stood stricken against a blast of frigid wind. At her front door was the last person in the world she ever expected to see.